Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good midnight, whatever your case may be. Good morning. This is Chaplain Sherry, Coach Sherry, your community pastor Sherry. This is Sherry from the 800 block of Mooney Avenue. I pray that all is well with you. Today is Friday. It is Friday. We are continuing in this Advent season as we move toward Christmas. If you are lighting your candles, it is almost time for you to light the center candle, the white candle that symbolizes the Christ child. After all, that's what we're looking for, right? That's the anticipation. That's the expectation. That's the grand finale of this season. And by the way, for those who follow the church's calendar, the liturgical calendar, the Advent season is the church's new year. The Advent season is the church's new year. From here, we will march on to the Lenten season. We will march to the Lenten season, where we will then go into moving into the death of Jesus. So the Advent season, we anticipate and expect the birth. On the Lenten season, in the Lenten season, we move toward the season or the time of the death of the one who was born in the manger. See how all of that ties in together? And then, of course, after Easter or the Lenten season, the death of Jesus, then remember, Jesus promised that I have to go, but I'm not going to leave you alone. I have to go. I'm going, but I'm coming. Now, figure that. I'm going, but I'm coming. And on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit comes. Or Jesus, if you want to say it, comes in another manifestation, comes in the presence of a spirit. Because really, Jesus could only be with the people because Jesus was in a human body, could only be at one place at one time, could only do one thing at one time. But with the presence of the Holy Spirit, with the Holy Spirit coming, the Holy Spirit comes, she is able to be with us always and everybody at the same time. So we are never without the presence of God. Again, this is Coach Sherry, Reverend Sherry, Chaplain Sherry, your community pastor Sherry. This is Sherry from the 800 block of Mooney Avenue. So as you are coming in, I would like for you to like, share, tag those in your space, in your clique, your crew, or your church. Now, before I start, as always, I have to make this grand announcement or disclaimer. You're going to see me applying my makeup. But please understand that this has nothing to do with makeup. Don't follow me for techniques, for tips, for products, for tools, none of that. Because each day has its own way of looking when it comes to my face. But guess what? I own that. And I have gotten to the point where each one of these looks when I go out is good enough for me. It's good enough for me. I'm reminded of my grandfather, who is now with the ancestors, who is now with God. He used to always say, my grandfather didn't have a lot of pomp and circumstances like my grandmother. And she was a fashion queen. When she went out of the door, you knew she was going out of the door. She had her own modeling sessions where she would just, you think I'm bad with photos. My grandmother took her own photos. Somebody was going to, as they say, strike her picture. Somebody was going to strike her picture. And she tried on her own clothes and did her own fashion show for herself and twirled on in the living room. And my grandpa, he may have looked at her and he may have not. But my grandfather, he had his regular routine every day. Khaki pants, khaki shirt, even after he retired. And sometimes they had paint stains on them. Sometimes, good morning, Dr. Jamie. Sometimes they had paint stains on and all kind of stuff and just didn't match up to what my grandmother was wearing. And my grandmother would always say, Charlie, look at you. You ought to put you on something. And my grandpa would say, but I bet you don't smell me. What he was saying is, don't be concerned about what I got on the outside. Because this does not determine who I am. I don't care how it looks. I bet you don't smell me. And sure enough, Grandpa was cleaner than the board of health, even with his clothes. And so I said all of that to say that however this makeup comes out, I bet you don't smell me. It looks good enough. It looks good enough for me. Good morning, Margaret Brown. I was telling them about my grandfather, your dad, that when my grandmother, when your mom would tell, be so dressed up, and Grandpa would just be in his khaki pants and his khaki shirt, and sometimes it would be have stains on the shirts and all of that kind of stuff, and Grandma would want him to put on something that looked like something. He would come back with, I bet you don't smell me. So no matter what you put on today, no matter how you step out, just make sure that your testimony is, I bet you don't smell me. So this morning we are continuing as we are marching toward Christmas. We are continuing in our showing Mary, looking at Advent through the eyes of Mary. And one of the things in this session today, Dr. Nichelle Guidry talks about is in her devotional Showing Mary. She talks about owning your own story. Owning your own story. Defining yourself for yourself and owning your own narrative rather than allowing someone else to create and control your narrative. One of the things as a journalist and people had some not so good parts of their life, or they had this is surely before social media. They had some kind of scandal or something was not quite going right in their lives, and it became public. And they would always say, I don't want to talk about it, or I'm not going to talk, or no comment. And what I will always tell them, Dr. Jamie, is that you might want to tell your own story. You might want to, as we say, get out in front of this, because here what you need to know, as the reporter, I'm still going to find a way to tell your story. I may have to go to your first grade teacher, to somebody who is close enough to the story that they will help me to put something together. So it's best that you tell your own story, because what's going to happen is you're going to get upset when the story comes out. And then you're going to want me to retract a whole lot of stuff that I'm probably not going to retract. So it's best that you tell your own story. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk to somebody else. But what it does say is that you have an opportunity to put your own words on your own story. That has served me well. People say, well, why do you tell so much, or why do you share so much? Because I'm going to tell my own story. Good morning, Case, and good morning. So glad that you're here. I'm going to tell my own story. I'm going to own the good, the bad, the highs, the lows. I'm going to own the pretty and the ugly. I'm going to control my narrative. Now, other people may say something about it, and it's not. I'm going to control that. And I believe that Mary, by singing her own song, controls her story. Now, let me just say this. Today is Friday, so I just kind of like go light on whatever I'm doing today. This is not I'm just trying to get out the door and do this Friday to be able to get to this, to be able to get to the end of the day, to be able to get to tomorrow to be off. That's what I'm trying to do. So when you say, well, what you doing today? You didn't do that yesterday. Well, that's why I tell you, don't follow me for for nothing, because you never know what I'm going to do. But Mary controls her own story. She sings her own song. She raises a noise, because that's what singing is raising a noise. She creates her own narrative. And do you know the narrative that she created is the story that we tell? We follow the narrative that she's given us. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't try to go behind the scenes. We don't try to go and ask other people and talk back to the text and try to fill in the gaps and all of that kind of stuff. But the basis of it, we have to start with her own narrative. With her narrative. I'm simply trying to say, tell your own story. Define yourself for yourself. Don't let other people determine what we know about you. Now, even in telling the stories, we don't tell everything. That's why that's the purpose of creating your own story and creating your narrative. Is you get to determine what people know. Everything else, they spend their whole lives trying to fill in the gaps. What is your story? Tell your own story. Create your own story. Sharon, why do you tell so much? Why do you put so much in your books? Well, trust me, I haven't put everything in my books. You don't know everything. But what you do know is what I've given you. Because I learned a long time ago, I'm going to create my own storyline. I'm going to create my own narrative. And guess what? I'm going to own all parts of it. Do you hear what I said? I'm going to own my own story. Everything else is speculation. Everything else is you trying to figure it out. But I'm going to own my story for myself. And you'll say, well, yeah. Did she do that? Yes. Read it. It's right here in the book. It's right here in the book. Own your own story, Jamie. The good, the bad. When I was married and had all of that going on, I either wrote about it in a column, because I did have I had a column when I was working in the newspaper called Saints and Sinners. Now you figure that out. You figure that out. Saints and sinners. And it's all the same people. I'm not trying to talk about in this part over here that this is the saints category and this is the sinners category. It's all tied up together. And I wrote about the marriage, when we were walking up to the marriage and all of the happy times preparing for the marriage. And then on the other side, I wrote about some of the chaos. Of course, I was at different newspapers, but if you go out there and search it and Google it, you'll be able to piece together my story based upon what I've already written or what I've already said. Own your story. But first of all, we can't be in denial of our stories. We can't be in denial of our stories, acting as if it did not happen, or making it be more than what it was. Many of us can't tell our stories because we're really living in the lie of our stories. We're living in the lie of our stories. Now, it's one thing to tell your story and then fabricate your story. There is a difference. Telling your story and fabricating your story. That's even worse. When people go looking, because they do, even in social media world, all you got to do is have the time. All you have to do is have the time to scroll and scroll and scroll until you find what you're looking for. And some people have time. Some people have the time to just go through and piece it all together and find out it was a lie. But if you tell it in its truth, and telling in its truth does not mean telling it all, but what it is that you tell, you're truthful about it. Mary has shown us what it means to create. Well, I'm not going to even say create, because the life that, the events, that's the creation in itself. Just living is the creation. But owning the story. And so I just want to leave us with today know your story. Own your story. And tell your own story. Otherwise, we'll be cobbling together something that you don't want. May all be well with your day.